Hey boys and girls, it's Miss Kelly back, and we are going to continue our lesson on Hansel and Gretel. Yesterday, you listened to the story of Hansel and Gretel, and we made some connections with how it was a fairy tale, and then we also recounted the story. So we're going to review those things, but first I want us to look at our learning target so we can remember and keep that fresh in our heads what our target is this week as we go through Hansel and Gretel. So behind me, you'll see the learning target, and I'm going to read it out loud to you. And it says, I can summarize stories to include important details, character traits, and comparisons between two texts. And yesterday, we summarized the story of Hansel and Gretel by identifying important details that happened throughout the story. And so today we're going to shift our focus and we're going to be talking about unknown words. And one of our purposes for reading is to find unknown words when and while we're reading. And so we're going to go through and I'm going to refer to these as vocabulary words because these are words that you may or may not have known what they mean, and we're going to talk about those words into greater detail. And our first word that we're going to look at is, I'm going to hold it up, and scarce is that word. And it was actually referred to as scarcely in the story. But if you notice on that visual of the word scarce, there's nothing there. And so I'm going to go back to our text and I'm going to reread this phrase or the sentence that it came from. So scarce is the word that we are looking at. And it said, at the edge of the forest there once lived a poor woodcutter. He could scarcely manage to feed his wife and his two children, Hansel and Gretel. So we see that word used, scarcely. And if we look right behind me, I have also our list, and it says scarcely here, and which means a small amount. So they didn't have a lot of food. They had a small amount of food. And that's where the author referred to that as he could scarcely feed them because he only had a small amount of food. So that's our first unknown word that we are going to talk about. We're going to move to our second one. And this may be a word you've heard before, but you may not have known what it means. And so our second word is anxious. And if you look at that visual of that little boy, he looks nervous. He looks a little worried. So he's feeling anxious right now. And so again, we're going to go back to our text and we're going to find that word and see how the author used it in the story. And so it says, the day came when there was nothing left to eat in their house but one loaf of bread, and he grew terribly anxious. So we can see, yeah, he's getting nervous. He's getting worried about not having enough food for his family. So if we turn back here, here is our word anxious. And the definition for anxious is afraid or nervous about what might happen. And so our character, the father, he's very anxious about what's going to happen if he runs out of food and cannot feed his family. Okay? So those are two words. The next word that we're going to look at, I bet all of you have heard this word before. And that word is fetch. And you can see that cute puppy dog. He is going to fetch that ball. And so let's look back at our text and find the word fetch to see how the author used that in the story. And so I'm going to read this page to you and we're going to look for the word fetch. And give me a thumbs up when you hear it. Early in the morning before daybreak, they all got up and each of the children was given a small piece of bread. As they walked along, Hansel often paused and gazed back. His father asked, my boy, why are you always stopping and peering back at the house? Oh, answered Hansel, I am looking at my little pigeon who is perched on the roof and wants to say goodbye to me. Secretly, however, he had crumbled up his bit of bread, and each time he turned around he would drop a crumb on the path. His mother said, just keep going. That is not your little pigeon. It is the sun striking the chimney. But Hansel kept glancing back, and each time he did, he dropped another crumb. And when they had come even deeper into the forest to where it was thickest, they stopped. Their father built a huge fire. Their mother told them to rest and wait while they went off to chop wood. As they sat by the fire, Gretel gave half of her bread to Hansel, for her brother had strewn all of his along the path. They waited till evening, but no one came to fetch them. Is your thumb up? Yep, I heard it. Fetch. No one came to fetch them. So let's look at our definition for fetch. To go after and bring something back. So that means no one came to get them and take them back home. So there we see our word fetch and how the author used that in the story. And many times we think of fetch as something we do with our pet. But really, fetch can be used in other ways as well, as the author proved to us in this story. Okay, so we're going to keep moving on with our unknown words. And another word that we're going to talk about is the word devouring. And you see these two children. And what are these children doing? That's right, they are eating that spaghetti. And they look like they are enjoying it. And they look like they have not eaten in a long time. So they are devouring that food. So let's find devouring in our text. And when you hear it, what you going to do? That's right, put your thumb up. On the third day, chilled and hungry, they came upon a little house that was built out of bread. Its roof was made of pancakes and its windows of sugar candy. The children were so happy to see it that they ran right up to it. Hansel to the spongy roof and Gretel to the sparkling panes of the window. And they ate greedily. Hansel was devouring a huge chunk of the roof, and Gretel was pushing out yet another window pane when they heard a voice. Is your thumb up? Yeah, I heard it too. They were devouring. So think for a minute. I want you to visualize, picture this in your brains. They have not eaten in several days. So can you picture Hansel and Gretel eating all of the sugary goodness on that house? I can. So when you think of devouring, you're thinking of someone who's really hungry. They haven't eaten in a very long time, and they finally have found some food. And they are eating it quickly, and they are enjoying every bit of it. So if we turn and we look at our anchor chart where it says devouring, it says to eat quickly in a way to show you are very hungry. You are eating so quick you don't want anybody to take it, and you're eating very greedily because you want it all to be yours. So yes, they were eating devouring. They were devouring, I should say, that food. Okay, so let's move. We got two more words, two more unknown words. And the next one we're going to look at is cauldron. And you can see that visual of what a cauldron is. But when you think of a cauldron, you think of a big pot. And the little old lady in the story, she told Gretel to go get that cauldron. So now, if you didn't know what cauldron was, now you can picture a big pot. And a lot of times we see cauldrons and they're black, but it doesn't have to be. But it's a big pot that you cook in. And so that word was used, and I am going to read. Remember, thumb up when you hear it. Early in the morning, when Gretel got up to light a fire under the cauldron full of water, the bread was already in the oven. Thumb up. Yep, it came quick that time. So yes, I heard the cauldron. The water was boiling into the cauldron. And you could use context clues for that, because we know that when you boil water, you typically put it in a pot. And so that cauldron is what she was preparing her water in. And so if we look at our anchor chart, we see cauldron, and it says a large pot. So think of a cauldron as a large pot. All right, we're going to talk about one more word. And that word is kneading. And you see that lady, what is she doing to that bread? What is she doing? Yeah, she is preparing that dough with her hands. So she's going to make something, maybe cookies, maybe it is just bread, but she's kneading that bread. And so we're going to find kneading in our text. And I have it right here. When you hear the sound, or I'm sorry, when you hear the word, put your thumb up. All right. Oops. Hold on, wrong page. There we go. Okay, back to it. Gretel was terrified of the old woman and had to do as she was told. Every day she brought Hansel water and lots of good food to eat. She herself got nothing but crayfish shells. And each day the old woman went to Hansel's stall and told him to stick out one of his fingers so she could feel if he were growing plump. And each day Hansel held out a bone instead of a finger. One evening, after 4 weeks had gone by, and it still seemed that Hansel was growing no fatter, the old woman said to Gretel, "Now, be quick about it. Go out and fetch water to fill the cauldron. Tomorrow morning, whether or not your little brother is fat, I am going to slaughter and boil him. While you are getting the water, I will be kneading the dough." Is your thumb up? Yep, I just heard it, kneading. So she's preparing that dough because they're going to have bread with their dinner. So she's kneading that dough. And if we look back here on our anchor chart, that's exactly what the definition for kneading says. To prepare dough with your hands. And you may have seen your mom do this, your grandmother doing this. When they have dough out and they're kneading it, they're getting it prepared. So now you know what that's called, okay? So those are our words for the week that I want you to be practicing, because on Friday you will see these words again. So let's review them one more time. So we have kneading, we have cauldron, we have devouring, we have fetch, we have anxious, and then finally, we have scarce or scarcely. And every day when Miss Kelly does her video, she's going to start it out by reviewing those words. All right, so now we're going to get to your assignment for today. And we're going to quickly review what we did yesterday. So if you look up here, we recounted our story yesterday, okay? So we picked out the important details to recount, to retell the story about what happened. So for our next assignment, if you need to hear the story again, you can always go back to day 1 and listen to me read the story again, and that can help you with your response that you're getting ready to work on. So either on the paper your teacher provided or in your Write About Reading notebook, you've got a question that I would like you to answer. And so I have up here in orange, listen to the story again. And that's only if needed. I know in my class we always listen to the story twice. So it may be helpful and beneficial for you to listen to it again. But then in your words, I want you to explain why it was important for the pebbles that Hansel collected to glisten. Think about those pebbles and how he spread them out when they first entered the woods with their parents, and what happened to them when the moon came out. So listen to the story once again, and then I want you to answer your question in your Write About Reading notebook or on the paper your teacher provided you. And if you're in Miss Kelly's class and after you're done, have a parent take a picture of your response and send it to me so I can see your great answer. All right? All right, boys and girls, enjoy your day, and we will be back tomorrow to do some more activities with Hansel and Gretel. Bye.